So I feel like it's amazing, and at the same time it's a challenge, like you said, right? And I think the parts of it that are amazing is that like we are so mentally connected that when like some weird shit is going down, we like look at each other and we're like, we both know what we're thinking. So like, for instance, if we've like been in a meeting like with an investor who's straight up just like being racist or like saying something that's sexist, we kind of have that sort of like mutual understanding of like, okay, here's how we're going to handle this. And it like was never a situation in which I didn't feel like I couldn't trust her. It's like that so much trust exists in these co-founder relationships, you know? So I felt like having like a co-founder that was a family member, it was just so much innate trust in our process and what we were doing. And I think like it's also that we have so many shared experiences around being first gen and also being on opposite sides of the coin that I feel like it kind of our skill sets like and our sort of dynamics as being like family members really gelled really well with each other. And I think like points that are like, you know, where there are conflicts, I think is like because when you're working with a family member, it's so close that sometimes you like don't keep your boundaries well. You know what I mean? You're like having a personal conversation like through text message, and then you're like, hey, like, did you hear about this from this guy? You know, or something like that, you know? And she's like, dude, it's literally 9 p.m. Like, why are you talking to me about work right now? Like, if you want to talk to me about work, like, why don't we do it this way, you know? Yeah. And so I feel like that was one of the biggest things and the biggest challenges that we had to kind of work through. Like, when do we have our work hats on? When do we have like our personal hats on? And also like we have different hats too. She's a doctor and I'm like also someone who's a patient, you know? It's like, so when is she also having her doctor cap on? Or when am I like someone who maybe needs like some medical support, that type of thing, you know? So I think it's on the whole created an environment where we can really be open and frank and honest and have like a trustworthy conversation in an environment with each other. And at the same time, I think we're constantly navigating how to like still protect ourselves and our time and our boundaries with each other so that we can keep those relationships like really positive and healthy.
How have you figured out maybe some of that communication stuff? Because I know I may not be in business with any of my family members, but my mother is an investor in the company. And so like, we can easily flip from a conversation about what's going on with the family to like, oh, how are things going? I don't know if how things are going. I need to give you a business update right now. Yeah. Or I can just brag about something. Yeah. We're not gonna dig into all the financials of what's happening. So yeah, how did you figure out how to balance that?
So one thing that I feel like is important to share is that I'm actually on the autism spectrum. So it's called ASD these days, but I guess like where I sit is like Asperger's. And so I think like communication has always been a challenge and a gift and a lot of sort of, something that I've really had to work on over the years. And so one thing that's really interesting in the autism community, that things that like folks who are kind of in this space like encourage, is to use tags to like kind of dictate the tone or the sort of like messaging around something. So there's like certain like tags, there's just like, it's like a hash and then it's like a J for joking. And so like what I realized though is that there are certain things that are kind of encouraged in the autism or ASD community that all of us can really rely on, like whether we're neurotypical or neurodiverse. So like similarly to that, if it's like, I think it's just being as clear as possible. It's like, hey, like, can we talk about work right now? And what hat are you wearing at the moment? And do you have capacity for this? You know, and like, if it's something that, if it's 9 p.m. and you need to send like a message to someone who's your family member, sometimes I've been like hashtag S for serious. So like, this is something that like needs attention. If it's like something quick and I'm like, hey, can I get on a phone call with you? Cause I really need to talk about this. It's kind of, you know, making sure that the communication is really, really clear and the intention is like really clear so that the other person is like hyper aware to like what you need in that moment and what you're asking for as well. And I think that also gets back to like this place of boundary setting, because I think the more clear you are with your communication around your needs and the more clear you are about like in what way you're also saying it, because so much gets lost in like text messages and emails and even like verbal conversations sometimes, I think like the better you can go about just like creating healthy boundaries in relationships too. So I think for me, it's just like been really important to just be explicit, you know, you're my family member, but right now I need this from you right now and it's serious and like ASAP, you know?
And yeah, that slash that you're putting in, is that before the message? Like you're basically keying them in to like what part of your brain are you going to use for this conversation? Yeah. I do that with family members. I do that with friends. I do that with like a lot of different folks. And I introduce it by saying like, hey, like, you know, I'm on the autism spectrum and this is kind of like a tool that I've like found that sometimes helps me kind of keep communication really clear with people. Like, would you be comfortable if I shared what this was about and you could decide if like you wanted to partake in this too?
type of thing.
I'm definitely stealing that because
Yeah, please. Yeah.
And I also like how you framed it too of asking like, what do you have the capacity for? Because there's so many times that even my own, team members or whether it be family members too, they'll ask me, questions and I just mentally am just burned out. I can't, as simple as the question may be, if it's business oriented, my brain is just on shutdown.
Yeah.
I can't. It's going to make me angry even trying to think about an answer.
Just hashtag end. No.
Yeah, exactly. But like being as intentional with it, just said, I think lowers that barrier to not have to feel like I have to answer it in that moment.
Exactly.
If we're asking each other, do you have the capacity for it? It's not saying that I can't answer you or I don't want to answer you. It's just in this particular moment, I don't have what it needs to give you a clear response. So
exactly, yeah. And I think the thing is like, brain scans have shown us over the years that all of us are a little bit neurodivergent in our own ways. All of our brains are a little bit different. And I think like that just translates to like all of our experiences, all of our communication, all of our needs also being a little bit different. And I feel like we all kind of attach like the same patterns, even when we don't necessarily get the same outcomes. So if we want like a different outcome, maybe it means that we like change the way that we kind of set our pattern and the way that we like approach things, So I feel like it's been really positive for me to have this sort of interaction with people where I'm just like very explicit and clear. And then I think like it creates also just like that also returns to you because then people start like to speak to you that way where they're like, hey, like, can I bother you about this? Like, is this okay? Like, this is how serious I am. This is the level of urgency. And it like really cuts down on time, like helps your mental health and just like lets people know like how you're feeling and like what you need and like what the next move is.